So Scottish Widows has created the pension mirror, and I think it's a brilliant piece of marketing. And to explain what it does, you go online to the website. We'll put a link in the notes of the podcast so people can go and have a play with it themselves. But the web address is actually pensionmirror.co.uk. And when you go there, it asks if you want to use it and you allow it to use your camera. Then what the website does, it looks at you and then guesses your age, a bit of fun, and then it tells you the size of the average pension pot for somebody of the age at which it estimates that you are. So it's taken that fun concept of the things people have probably done on social media, where you have an app that guesses your age. This is doing the same thing, so it's a bit of fun, but it's actually trying to apply something to do with pensions on it. So it's incredibly engaging, and it's a very clever way of getting people to engage with pensions. And this was actually put in Waterloo Station. So they had a freestanding one which people could use, which obviously attracted attention. So I have to give Scottish Widows a bit of a pat on the back for this. But I am going to, in effect, not criticise it. I'm going to show me using it, but then I'm going to tell you some of the slight drawbacks about the results it gives you, and then give you some slightly better ones. So I'm going to do this now live on the podcast, but Andy's going to take over in a second and commentate what's going on screen for those who can't see, because I have to stay still while it's trying to judge my age. So I'm just now clicking on to allow camera on the website.
So Damien's clicked on the allow camera, and for those that are going to try that at home, it will come up with pension mirror. It's asking to keep it in an area of natural light. You've got to keep still, look down the lens. It says get ready. And there, Damien, you've got the results. I'll leave it to you.
So it now claims I'm 34. I am, in fact, 46. So that is good news. So Andy, he's the same age as me pretty much, and it guessed his correct age, didn't it, Andy? So I think everybody in the office was slightly disappointed if they weren't guessed much younger than what they are.
Yeah, I do think that the lack of hair makes it quite easy for it to estimate that I'm in my mid-40s, and I'm going to put it down to that. So I was a bit gutted. Everyone was coming up at least 10 years younger, but it's okay. I'm over it now. It was a week ago that we did it.
But as Andy said, it's a bit of fun because I've done this multiple times and I've come up with various different ages, and typically it seems to take about 10 years off. I've always been told I look younger than I am, but we've all done this and it tends to come up with an age that's broadly somewhere near where you are. The point is that it then gives you a number that starts to engage you with the pension pot of the average person in that age. And you can vary the age. You can move it up and down to your correct age. So I'm doing this on the screen now. I can move it up and down towards different ages so I can see what the average pension pot is. So it guessed that I was 34. It therefore says that the average person has £16,233 in their pension pot. If I put up towards my correct age, which is 46, it says the average person has £68,033 in their pension. So the idea is that it's engaging you with your pension pot, but it's also therefore making you think about, well, have I got enough in there? Now, I'm going to read out, because if you don't have time to do this, you're probably still wondering what the numbers are that come out. So I've actually gone through and crunched the numbers and done it for different ages anyway. So if you're age 25, the average person apparently has £4,633. I'll actually round these numbers up so I don't have to read out every pound and pence. So if you're 30 years old, it says the average person has about £10,600. 35-year-olds, 17,000. 40-year-olds, the average 40-year-old has £38,500 in their pension. The average 45-year-old has 59,500. The average 50-year-old is 87,000. 55-year-olds on average have 146,000. 60-year-olds have 197,000, and the average 65-year-old has 224,000. So you can see there what the numbers are. You can put yourself in there somewhere and get an estimate. Now, there'll be people who look at those numbers and might think, oh, actually, that's pretty good. I've got more than the average. The issue that I have with the tool, it's a bit of fun and it gets you talking. That is a big tick. But what it does also do, assuming it gets your age right, of course, is that it gives you the average of the people in the UK. And of course, this is an average of a population that is very bad at putting money into pensions. And it's also a population that hasn't been engaged in auto-enrolment all that long. So this is taking the average of a very bad bunch, and therefore it gives you that average, and you compare yourself to that and you think, oh, well, that's good, I'm better than average. But the reality is the money that is in the average pot is still not going to be anywhere near enough to give people what would be considered an average retirement. Now, if you go back to podcast 452, we talked about the income needed for a comfortable retirement. It was based upon analysis from the Pension and Lifetime Savings Association. So it's worth going back and listening to that. And there had been a massive jump in 1 year in the amount of money that the average lifestyle in retirement would require. So you would need to have a moderate lifestyle in retirement, £31,300 a year in income. Now, you'll see where I'm going with this in a second. Now, these numbers assume that that includes the UK state pension. So if you strip that out, and I've done all these numbers, you're going to end up with about £19,300 that you need to generate from your pensions when you get to state retirement age, which at the moment is 66. So your pension pot has got to be of sufficient size, we're assuming a defined contribution pensions here, to produce that extra income to give you an average lifestyle. Well, you can already tell that 224,000 is not going to be enough when it comes to retirement to produce an annual income of £19,000 a year. Now, I've told people what the average person has at various ages in their pension, but I'm going to tell them now what they should have, because it's significantly different and I think far more useful. Now, of course, it is one of those calculations. How much should you have? It depends on how much you want in retirement. It depends on how much you're putting in. It depends on your age. So it's quite a lot of moving parts. But what I've done is gone for a typical person out there. So you can use this as a bit of a finger in the air estimate of where you are in terms of pension savings. So as I've said, I went and looked at that report from the Pension and Lifetime Savings Association, and I worked off that moderate retirement income level of 31,300. As I say, taking into account the state pension, that gives you about 19,000. It's 19,300 roughly that you need to generate from your pension pot. Now, that means that by state retirement age, if you use the various calculators out there, there's a really good one on Money Helper, which I'll put a link to in the notes of this podcast. You're going to need roughly £350,000 in your pension pot by the time you're 66. So for people now who are reaching a state pension age where they get their state pension, they're going to need roughly £350,000 in there if they're going to produce that extra income to top up their pension to the levels they need in retirement to have that comfortable retirement. I'm basing this upon a single person. If you go back to that original research by the PLSA, you will see that actually if you're a couple, then the numbers are slightly different. But based on a single person, if you start to look at the numbers and start to crunch them, if you assume that you are somebody who earns the average wage in the UK, so that's 33,700, and if you assume you're auto-enrolled, so therefore you're getting 5% employee contributions and 3% employer contributions, that actually works out roughly to be about £230 a month gross you're putting into your pension because of auto-enrolment. So I'm just taking the average person here. And so what I've done is go at various ages. So I'm going from 10 years before state retirement, 20 years, 30 years and 40 years. I'm looking at what you need to have in your pension pot, assuming that you're going to keep putting that £230 a month into your pension. It's never going to change. That's another assumption. And you're never going to get a pay rise. That's another assumption. It just gives you this finger in the air idea. Now, the numbers I'm about to read out are significantly different to the ones that calculator told you the average person had. Now, these numbers are assuming that you get 5% growth every year on all your contributions and the money in your pension. It's also assuming it's net of inflation and charges. So if you want to earn more than inflation, you've got to add that on top of this 5% growth rate. And you're not taking any tax-free cash out of your pensions. So getting all that out of the way, if you are age 26, the Pension Mirror said that the average person had £5,600 in their pot. Well, I've assumed you don't have anything and you start paying £230 a month. You would actually get to your £350,000 by the time you get to state retirement age, which at the moment is 66. I know it's going up. When you're 36 and you're still paying that $230 a month gross employee and employer contributions in total. The Pension Mirror said that you should have about £22,700 in your pot. I've actually worked out you should have about £36,000 in your pot. So if you rely on the average person, they're already only got about 63% of what they should have by that age. When you get to 46, the Pension Mirror said the average person has £68,000. You should in fact have £94,000. If you get to age 56, the Pension Mirror says you should have £150,000 roughly. I'm rounding down there, but you should have £192,000. And when you get to obviously age 66, the Pension Mirror says the average person has £225,000. Well, you should, as I've already said, have £350,000. So you can see that most people, on average, only have about 2/3 of what they need to get the retirement that they want, the comfortable retirement, when they get to age 66. Of course, they could, with their average pots, get a slightly lower retirement, one that is basically more of a minimal retirement. But what I want to point out to people is that this Pension Mirror, have a play of it. It's a great idea, engages you. So what it shows is most people aren't putting enough into their pension pots, but also auto-enrolment hasn't done enough yet for people who are older to build up a big enough pension pot. For younger people, pension auto-enrolment could be a very good thing, but obviously the reality is when you're young, you're not going to be earning the average wage when you are 22. You're likely to be earning below the national average that's out there. So you're going to have to vary your contributions. But it does show that if you start investing and putting money into a pension when you're younger, you can get a much bigger pension pot. So for the people out there who are young, of course, do make sure you pump your pensions and you start saving for retirement, which you're likely to do with auto-enrolment. But obviously, if you're older, it may be time to sit down and look at what's in your pension. Don't just focus on the average, but look at what you actually need for the retirement that you want. And in that case, you might need to go and seek financial advice.